This video will show you how to replace the front lower control arm on a Chevy Malibu. This is part of your front steering and suspension located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground and we'll have the suspension hanging. Now once you've done that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, let's pay attention directly in the center of where our brake rotor is and we'll remove our axle nut. To remove the axle nut, we'll be using a 32mm socket. Let's go ahead and turn this counterclockwise. A quick note about removing the axle nut. If you find when you're attempting to loosen or tighten the axle nut, it wants to spin on you, you can either have a second person holding on the brake pedal or you could carefully use a pry bar directly down towards the ground in between your studs, being careful not to cause any damage, preventing this from turning. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continue on with a hammer and punch. As far as the punch is concerned, you're going directly in the center of the axle. We're going to start tapping on this to break the axle free from our wheel bearing hub. We do not want to use the hammer on the axle, which could potentially cause damage. Now that I do have movement from here, let's continue on. Now that we have the axle nut off there, let's make our way along the inboard side. This is where we can see our lower control arm. We'll focus on the lower ball joint mounting nut. We're using a 21mm to start loosening this. Be careful not to cause damage to your axle boot. During the removal or the installation, you may find that the ball joint stud spins inside of the knuckle, in which case you're not going to be able to remove the mounting nut. To help prevent this, you can apply pressure underneath your lower control arm. We're going to apply light pressure. That's going to press the ball joint stud into place, holding it while we use our 21mm to remove that mounting nut. Off of here. There's our mounting nut. We can set this aside for recycling. We'll remove pressure from underneath the lower control arm. Now, since I am replacing the lower control arm with ball joint assembly, I'm going to use a pickle fork in this area, which is going to help separate the steering knuckle from my ball joint. Once we have this broken free, we'll continue on. Perfect. Now, as far as the lower control arm's concerned, there's going to be forward hardware and rearward hardware. To help gain access to the forward hardware and move things around as necessary, let's start dislodging this forward panel. Now, we don't have to fully remove the panel. We're just starting down along the bottom at our 2 lower mounting bolts. Use a 7mm for each of these. Looking in between the 2 bolts, there's a port here. You may find you have a plastic push clip. Remove that as well, assuming you have one. Both of these bolts should look the same. We're not worried about mixing them up. So with that panel out of the way, it would expose our forward hardware, which we can gain access to from along the top of this subframe here. But we also need to gain access to our rearward hardware as well. So we have another plastic panel that we're going to dislodge. We're using a 7mm for all of our mounting bolts coming across here. We do not need to fully remove this. It just needs to be low enough that we can start removing the hardware. That should be far enough. Now that we have that pulled down, we can see the rearward hardware. We're going to be using an 18mm for the mounting bolts. Those protrude from the bottom, up through the subframe, through our control arm bracket, and up along the top. You're going to find you have 2 18mm mounting nuts, 1 for each bolt. There's that bolt and the mounting nut. A thorough inspection to confirm they're not rotted, weak, or damaged in any way. Let's continue on to the next. Same process. Let's make our way to the forward hardware next. Now, as far as the forward mounting bolts, you can see those located just next to our front axle. We're using an 18mm for each of these bolts. Keep in mind, these bolts are the last thing holding the control arm in place aside from the rearward bracket going around our subframe. Let's take hold of the lower control arm at the ball joint. We're going to start pulling this down and away from our knuckle. Once we have this pulled away enough, we can start pulling away on the front. We'll twist this out of position and start removing the rearward bracket as well. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, let's make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. We're going to be focusing on our subframe here. Along the front, we have the 2 ports for our 2 mounting bolts. Along the rearward side, you're going to want to make sure you clean around that subframe, make sure it's not rotted in any way. After cleaning all that, we're making our way out towards our steering knuckle. This area is where our brand new ball joint's going to slide up and into. We need to make sure there's no debris. You also want to make sure there's no lubricant in this area. Now we can prepare to install our brand new front lower control arm. As we bring this into position, we know that this is the rearward side. This is going to slide directly over our subframe. We're swinging the forward side into position next, and then we can start in our hardware. As you start bringing this across, you're going to find that it may bind on you. Just keep pressing as necessary. You can also lightly tap with a rubber mallet if necessary. As we bring this down, let's be aware of our backing plate. Start swinging this over, bring it up into position. Now I have my front bolts. I'm using some red thread locker. We'll go ahead and start these in. We are leaving these bolts loose until we get to our rearward bolts. After everything's started in, we can snug them up, and I'm going to be torquing each of these bolts to 74 foot-pounds. Now, if you find you have a hard time aligning this mounting bolt port, you may find that you have to make your way to the rearward area of the control arm. We're going to press the bracket in towards the subframe. That should help us align this. You may also find that you have to alter the suspension height. Both of those are started in. We are not tightening them yet. Let's make our way to the rearward hardware next. When you go to install the rearward hardware, you may find that the bracket is off kilter. To help adjust this and align our mounting bolt ports, you can use an awl. We'll just make our way straight up and through. You can make your adjustment as necessary. I have my mounting nut. Once you have all pieces of hardware holding the control arm to our subframe, we can start tightening each of them. The torque for each piece of hardware will be 74 foot-pounds, front and rear. Wrench up along the top. Now we can torque each piece of hardware along the backside before moving towards the front. You may have to hold the upper hardware using a wrench. Moving along to the forward hardware, snug it, torque it to 74 foot-pounds as well. Start securing our shield here. We'll start in our mounting bolts, making our way across towards the rear here. We'll start snugging these from the front. We're applying rearward pressure. Double check to ensure that's properly secured. Let's continue on with our inside fender liner onto this shield. For this shield, we're aligning it, starting in our bolts. After they're bolts started in, go ahead and snug them up. If you happen to have a push clip, install that as well. Push pin port right there. Now let's make our way to where the ball joint stud is going to go through our steering knuckle. You're going to find you have to carefully pull down on the control arm. This is going to be under pressure. You can use a pry bar for leverage. Once we do have this pulled down far enough, we're going to have to align the ball joint stud with the knuckle. At the same time as doing that, we need to make sure that the axle shaft is going through the inboard side of the wheel bearing. Just use a pry bar here. This moves. Now, before we can install our ball joint nut, as you remember during the removal process, it's possible that the ball joint stud will spin. To help prevent that, I'm going to apply upward pressure. Now, a note about this is a brand new ball joint. We do not want to press directly against the center of this area here, which could potentially cause damage. I'm just going to use a small spacer, make our way right in between here. Now, we don't need to apply too much pressure. We just want to try to prevent that stud from spinning while we continue on with our mounting nut. Now that we have upward pressure holding this up, we'll continue on with our ball joint nut. As for this mounting nut, go ahead and start it on. We're going to bottom it out. The torque for this would be 30 foot-pounds. Right there's bottomed out. Now, if you did have a 21mm crow's foot, you could torque this to that 30 foot-pounds. Otherwise, we'll continue on with our wrench. We're going to make sure this is nice and snug. Remove pressure from under your control arm. Now it's time to reinstall our axle nut. A note about this is when you install it, you can only use a hand tool. Do not use an impact tool, which could cause damage to your bearing. To help prevent this from turning while we continue on, I'm down close to the ground. I'm using a pry bar carefully diagonally across my lug studs, being aware not to cause any damage. This will prevent this from turning. Install your axle nut. When we go to install this, we're going to bottom it out. We'll torque it to 111 foot-pounds. After that, we're going to loosen it a quarter turn and then retorque it to 185 foot-pounds. 185. Now one last quick inspection and we can reinstall our wheel. We're going to get the wheel in place. Once we have it up there, go ahead and start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We're going to bottom them out in a crisscross manner. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and we can torque each lug nut to 100 foot-pounds. Now I have the wheel safely on the ground. We're going to torque these to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you want to do is take your vehicle for a road test. Listen for any odd noises and get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.